Okay, hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. In today's video, we are talking about the LSAT, which is a subject I get a lot of questions about, and it's a subject I don't talk about on my channel too much because I kind of feel unqualified to talk about it. Let me explain. I self-studied for the LSAT. I ordered books off of Amazon and just did it all myself. I have a whole video on my experience, I can link it below. And I did okay. I took the test twice. I actually got the same exact score both times, and I scored in the mid 160s. A good score. I got into plenty of law schools. Like, I can't discredit that. That said, I don't think it was the best I could have done, and I think if I could do it all over, I would change my preparation a lot. I would have a tutor. I would take it a lot more seriously. I would have more structure. And especially now, like, law school admissions have gotten so competitive. This score matters a lot. It matters a lot for admission, so had I scored higher, I could have gotten into better law schools, sure. But more importantly, in my opinion, it matters a lot for scholarships. And so I try not to dwell, but I do feel like I kind of left money on the table there. And so I don't talk about it that much on my channel because, you know, I can't make a video about how to score in the 170s on your LSAT because I didn't score in the 170s on my LSAT. So I don't really feel like anyone's like go-to guide for LSAT tips, you know? So for today's video, I brought in someone who did score in the 170s and who is a go-to guide for LSAT prep. So I want to thank Premier LSAT Prep for sponsoring today's video. And so for this video, I had a conversation with an academic manager named Jake over there. And I'm just going to show you guys that conversation. We touched generally on 4 areas where I felt like my preparation was lacking, and just sort of 4 areas where a tutor could have really benefited me. And Jake confirms that I was right. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, we just kind of touch upon his experience. He got a 174. He now works in LSAT prep. He is the perfect person to talk about common pitfalls of self-studying and how just some personalized attention by someone who knows the test really well, how far that can go. And I'm especially excited to partner with this company because Premier LSAT Prep's main goal is to make LSAT tutoring accessible and affordable for everyone. So I'm just gonna kick it over to our conversation. I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks again to Premier LSAT for sponsoring this video, and I'm so excited to partner with someone who can give you the expertise that I cannot. So here it goes. Okay, to start, why don't you just tell everyone who you are, what you do, and what your experience with the LSAT was?
Yeah, totally. So I'm Jake. My name's Jake, and I am a academic manager at Premier LSAT Prep, which is an LSAT tutoring company. And when I took the LSAT, I had a long journey. Starting in the 140s. When I took a diagnostic test, and then I took a course, studied on my own for a while. After 3 or 4 months of studying, I took the exam. Scored a 140. I mean, not 140, in the mid 160s, which is a great score, but not quite kind of where I wanted to be. I was aiming for the 170s, and then had to do a bunch more studying, and eventually wound up with a score in the 170s, a 174, that I was happy with, and basically ever since then. I've been tutoring the LSAT, kind of trying to give as many, people as possible the same sort of experience that I was able to have, and show people that it's possible to make, really big score improvements like that. And then, the other element of our company is that we're trying to keep this, this tutoring option, which I think most people would agree is probably one of the is the best way to learn this exam. Trying to keep it as affordable as possible, so as many people have access to it as we can manage.
Cool. Yeah. No, I know when I was studying, I was like fresh out of college, obviously didn't have much money. And as far as tutoring went, it was either like you study on your own or you pay a boatload for like a prep course, or even more for a private tutor or something like that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's tough if you're just studying on your own, to make those kinds of score improvements. Some people can do it, but most people, it's really, really tough.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Okay, cool. So I figured for the format of this video, I'm just going to identify 4 areas that I could have improved upon in my LSAT experience. And people who watch my videos are familiar with my LSAT journey if they've watched them.
But there's definitely some things I could have done better, which is why I'm super excited to have you on to sort of share how you can wind up with a 174 just by making some small improvements and preparing a little bit differently. So the first area that we already kind of touched upon is just structure. I am a pretty disciplined person, but I'm not a robot. And so like to wake up and just use my free time to do practice LSATs or anything like that, I tried, but like I really didn't do that many. And I don't know, I think we just learn things better through like a structured format. So can you talk a little bit about any ways in which structure helped your preparation and sort of what your study habits and routines looked like?
Totally. Yeah. Yes, structure is a big thing. You know, if you have a full-time job and you're studying for the exam, sometimes I think it's often even harder if you're in school and studying for the exam. In the ideal scenario, which is not always feasible for everyone, is it's the only thing you're doing. But from my own experience, I was just out of college and I was working a 9 to 5 job while I was studying. And so yeah, you know, when I first started studying, I took a course. As part of that course, we had, you know, assignments in between each meeting. And so, you know, those sorts of things, you know, definitely provided some structure. Once I finished the course, though, of course, you know, I had to like kind of figure it out on my own, which is why, you know, I always say it would have gone a lot faster and I just started working with a tutor in the first place. But having a tutor or even just a course, something that can provide you with some guidelines is going to be really helpful so that you know what you should be doing, right? In the earlier stages, you're going to be doing those assignments, learning each question type, each game type, you know, each topic one at a time, you know, getting practice with those in between your meetings. And then, you know, as you get more, as you progress further through your studying, you're going to be doing more and more like practice tests and practice sections and reviewing those as well. And you'd be surprised how important it is not only to learn, you know, the strategies of the LSAT and everything like that, but also to learn like what the proper study strategies are, knowing the right way to review a section, you know, knowing the best way to improve, you know, when you're making mistakes, is pretty big. It's good to have those that guidance, so you know, not only how much you should be doing and that you actually do it, but that you're doing the right things as well.
And it makes it like less daunting too, I would assume, because it's a little bit more broken up through a tutor or a prep course or something like that, as opposed to like when I was studying, it was just all the books every day and I would try to just figure it out and divide it. And it was so overwhelming that oftentimes it was paralyzing. So I'm sure that, you know, with the kind of tutor structure you're talking about, it makes it more digestible and easier to comprehend.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the other you know, big thing about it, and maybe we'll talk about this more later, but it's really easy when you're just using the books, when you're just studying on your own at the start to develop, you know, you'll learn a lot of material, but you might often develop some bad habits along the way that you don't realize at the time. You know, if you're taking a shortcut, it might feel like, oh, you know, I can do this and still get the right answer, but you don't see the bigger picture and how that might hurt you like further down the line. So we work with a lot of students who studied on their own at the beginning of their study process, and then, you know, they kind of hit a wall, and then they come to us and they say, you know, I need help getting past this wall, past this plateau, and we can absolutely, you know, get them there. The task just becomes a little bit more difficult, right? Because it's not only then are you learning new material, but you're also having to unlearn some of that, those bad habits that you might have picked up when you were just studying on your own, which can in many cases be a little bit more difficult than just learning the new material.
So the next piece that I want to talk about is more material specific. And something that I think was lacking with the books is like, I was joking with you earlier, like the books teach you how to take the LSAT the same way a calculus textbook technically teaches you calculus. But you have a math teacher in the room for a reason. Like, otherwise they would just give you the book and send you home. And so can you talk a little bit about like how you guys go about teaching actual strategies as opposed to just like, this is the logic games, here's how they work and whatever. I feel like, you know, there's deeper and more detailed strategies. First, you're going to start with this, look for this type of word, and then you're going to go from there that the books might not teach you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all that stuff is different for every section, question type, and piece of it. I guess, you know, maybe the clearest example of something like that is on logic games, where I always say it's like one thing to get the answer right in logic games. It's kind of a completely different task entirely to get the answer right within the 35 minutes that you're allotted for the section, right? And so a lot of that comes down, especially in logic games, comes down to the way that you're going about, that you're going through the answer choices, right? You could just brute force it and just, you know, test every single answer choice for one of those questions, and you'd get the right answer. But if you do that for every question, you're gonna, you know, you're not going to be able to get to all 4 games within the 35-minute section. And so, yeah, a big benefit of working, you know, with someone who's done it before is having those strategies that, okay, you're not just gonna brute force it. You're not just gonna do this one thing to get the answer right. You're going to, you know, take this one step, get rid of some answers, take another step that'll help you get rid of some answers. And then, you know, if you're in this situation, then you do this. If you're in this other situation, you do this, you know? Yeah, it's there's so much detail there. Some of which, you know, you can pick up, you know, on your own or using a book, but there's just so much there that someone who's done it before is going to be able to provide you with a lot of guidance there, rather than, you know, just trying to do it on your own.
Especially when most people who are studying, like you said, most people have something else going on. They might be an undergrad, they might have a full-time job. Like, most people have stuff going on. So how much more efficient is it to just have someone teach you the strategy as opposed to like spending months studying and seeing if you pick it up on your own and just trying to like manhandle every question on your own unless you learn the strategy. So it saves a lot of time too in the studying process, I'm sure, to just be like, no, this is how we do it. I'm going to teach you from the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. That's something that I talk about a lot as well. I kind of alluded to it earlier, is that I personally, I didn't use a tutor. I just didn't even think about it. I don't know. And I also didn't know that it would be the most effective way to learn the exam. And so I took this course, which, like I said, taught me a fair amount, but it didn't bring me to where I really wanted to be. And so then I took a few months of like trial and error, basically, like trying to figure it out on my own. You know, what strategies were going to work, what strategies wouldn't. And as I mentioned before, initially that didn't really work. You know, when I took my first exam after doing that, I wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I had to reevaluate and say, okay, I tried that, didn't work, let me try something else. And then I eventually figured out something that worked. But all that is to say is that, you know, had I just had a tutor, some guidance there, more personalized guidance there from the start, the whole process, I think, would have gone a lot faster.
Which brings me right to my next point, which is that nothing about my studying was personalized because I just ordered these books off of Amazon and just kind of did it on my own. And so, like you were saying earlier, I probably had a lot of like bad habits or common mistakes I was making that I never even knew I was making. All I knew was I was getting this question wrong or that question wrong, but no one was ever like looking over my shoulder to point out like, oh, you do this every time and this is why you keep getting these wrong and stuff. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, the types of, as you said earlier, everyone's different. So can you talk a little bit about how like personalized tips, how far those can go and how you can avoid all those mistakes that you might not even know you're making?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, a big part of the tutoring process, at least with us, is in the sessions doing drills and practice problems together. It kind of like, in most cases, what happens is like, you know, we'll start off doing a lot of things like really closely together, and then slowly but surely, like, you know, the student takes over and they start doing the question on their own, or the questions on their own. And exactly what you're saying, we start to notice some trends, right? We're like, okay, yeah, you got this question wrong. Let's try to figure out why you got it wrong, right? And so then we can often pinpoint the reason why you're getting the question wrong, and then, you know, we might be able to say, okay, well, you're forgetting this strategy that we talked about earlier. You know, don't forget about that. Let's try it again. Or it might be something like, okay, the way that we were talking about it before is really not clicking for you. Let's try, you know, thinking through it in a different way that might click better. So yeah, it's a big part of the learning process is getting real practice and seeing what's working and what's not, and adjusting based off of that.
The last piece that I just find a tutoring service can help a lot with, just in speaking to people who have used them, is just keeping an eye on what's happening with the LSAT over the years. Yes, the test has been around for forever, but it evolves just like anything, and it needs to stay challenging. And, you know, sometimes the test makers might make changes or really gravitate towards a certain type of question over the years. And like the books that I was using, for example, were probably published quite a while back and don't change. Do you guys, does Premier keep tabs on that sort of thing and just be like, oh, hey, they're loving this type of logic game, let's make sure we hit that, and things like that? And have you seen the test evolve over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the test does definitely evolve. And yeah, we have to keep tabs on it to make sure that everything we're doing is up to date. And all the advice we're giving is the best. I mean, that being said, the exam, it changes, but it changes relatively slowly for the most part. Your LSAT score sticks around for 5 years, right? You can use it 5 years after you take the exam. So someone who takes it in 2023, it has to be a pretty similar exam to, you know, the way it looked in 2018. So for that reason, there isn't like a ton of change. But there are trends, you know, like you said, some question types that used to show up super often that don't quite show up as often anymore. And yeah, that's just like another, as you said, you know, an important part of having someone who's been there before. You know, one thing that I see students get confused with a lot is they'll do practice tests from, you know, the very early days, practice tests, you know, 1 through 20 or something, which can be useful, but they'll see something on it and then they'll come into the session, they'll be like, I was so confused here, like what is going on with this question? I have no idea how to approach it. And more often than not, the reason for that is it's just a question type or a way of asking something that doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, so that can be confusing for some people.
Those were like the 4 areas that I just identified in my own studying that could have been improved upon. Can you tell us a little bit about just sort of what Premier offers and how it goes and things like that, just sort of what tutoring would look like?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different, of course, you know, depending on who you are. I'll give like the explanation for if you're just, you know, kind of starting from scratch, because that's really the ideal scenario, just starting from the beginning. Basically, you know, we go through a curriculum, one logical reasoning question type at a time, one logic game type at a time, and you know, reading comprehension strategies as well. You know, we go through all of that, doing drills, doing practice problems, you know, all through that. And if there are any topics, you know, sometimes there might be a topic where a student is like really struggling with it. You know, we do it for a session and then they come back the next session and they're like, you know, I'm still really not clicking for me, right? We can always, you know, be flexible and do some more review on that topic, slow things down if we need to, or even sometimes, you know, speed things up. You know, there are plenty of instances where, you know, we might be focusing on a topic and the student's like, well, I feel like I've got this figured out already, we don't really need to spend much more time on it, in which case we can just skip right over it and move on to the next thing. Most students, I would say, work with us for, about 4 months or so if they're starting from scratch. That'll get you all the topics that that'll cover every logical reasoning question type, every logic game type, and all the reading comprehension strategies. Some students continue to work with us after that. They'll go right up until the exam, and that can be useful because you might, once you've covered all the material, some students or most people still have a little bit of room to improve, right? Figuring out where their weaknesses are, pinpointing those, and doing really thorough review to get those remaining points. Some people are just ready to take the exam right then, and after 4 months or so of tutoring, they'll just take the exam and go. And other people, they'll self-study after working with us. And at that point, self-studying can be very useful because we've given you all the tools that you would need, and have hopefully guided you to know exactly the most effective way to be self-studying on your own. So a common question I get is like, when should I get a tutor? I always say getting a tutor as soon as possible, as soon as you start studying is always the best thing to do, so you can avoid getting those bad habits at the beginning of your studying. But if you're trying to self-study at some point in your studying process, it's a great idea to do that after you've worked with a tutor, because as I mentioned before, it's going to be super effective once you get to that point, because you'll have all the tools and knowledge to get to your goal score if you're not already there.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to tell us everything that I could not. Can you tell everyone where they can find Premier? And I'll link everything below, but you can just tell us where we can find it.
Yeah, our website is just premierlsatprep.com. All the information is there. You can also schedule a free consultation there, where if you want to learn a little bit more about what we have to offer or have any questions, we can always answer them there.
Cool. Thank you.
Sweet. Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. I really did. I thought it was full of useful and practical tips and considerations, and I hope that if you are studying for the LSAT or starting to study, this video helped you design your preparation strategy with a little bit more clarity. So thanks again to Premier LSAT Prep for sponsoring this video. I will have their info linked down below, and best of luck on the LSAT.